Boy, welcome. Well, you guys just missed the first 10 minutes of a fantastic conversation. But I'm just here. I'm at Jackson's MMA, and we're at a new academy, and I didn't double hit my thing, and I needed to. And I'm here with Greg Jackson. Now we're laughing at my flaws here, but
no flaws at all. I'll do a quick recap.
Yeah,
John Dotson and Donald Cerrone are the safest individuals in the world, and they just finished helping old ladies cross the street for like 2 hours and doing nothing at all dangerous.
Nothing dangerous or death-defying.
So that you missed that.
So there's that. And then basically some background of Greg. Greg's got a little bit of a cold right now that he got from an infant because he, by his own description, is not as powerful as an infant.
This is true.
That's matured to 4 months of age at this point. And,
my little brother's infant that lives in Nashville, and we're going to blame it on the kid because he can't defend himself. So.
And then also, a little-known fact, that out of a plethora of champions of the Jackson family in the wrestling realm, Greg was never a formal wrestler in that regard.
That's true. My little brother was a state champion here. My father was a state champion. Uncle was a D2 national champion. I had a lot of wrestlers, but I was too busy being a very dumb kid to wrestle. So. And
then my question, I guess, is still like as far as bringing, as far as being a real originator and kind of like the primary coach that anybody knew about, and laying a foundation not only as a road, like really creating a pathway, like forging a pathway that didn't exist before. It's like this. It was an untraveled road to get guys into the UFC or into Pride or into King of the Cage or something. Like, how do you do that? And not only that, but then being a coach that's been mimicked by other coaches as far as being a strategist and really having game plans together. And I don't think there's anybody that does that to the degree that you do.
Yeah, I guess I always wanted to approach things intelligently. You know what I mean? I wanted to be good at my job, and I guess that's what the job was. I've always been kind of inclined to think about things. I guess I don't know how to say this exactly, but I was raised in a very intellectual household. My father, Jim Dudley, who's kind of like my second dad. These are my mentors, and these guys really pushed me to my intellectual boundaries and gave me a lot of new information. My mother's the same way. She's huge into art and music. And
Mr. Dudley's a professor, right?
Yeah, at the University of New Mexico. He teaches math there.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's a great man. Bill Zimmer, who was also a former professor there, should also be mentioned. He was a statistician there, and he also has had big influence. As a matter of fact, I'm getting into this whole synchronization thing, and it's because of him. He's got me on this synchronization path now with this new science of synchronicity, which is pretty cool.
Explain that a little bit.
Well, there's this guy named Strogatz who has a book out called Sync, and it's about kind of how both biological and non-biological systems will naturally synchronize together, right? So if there's any kind of form of communication, I'm about halfway through the book at the moment, but there's any form of communication, things will start synchronizing together. And the stuff that he uses is like these fireflies in Thailand that all blink at the exact same time, right. Thousands and thousands of them. Well, that shouldn't be happening. They should be off and on and
right.
Changing patterns. But things synchronize, and that's probably how life organizes and how
Did
a lot
you
of
say
stuff
biological happens. And mechanical things?
Right, yeah. Like pendulums and stuff, if they communicate, will start synchronizing together if they can. Wow. If the vibrations go, yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it has to be in that way, because how does nature organize, right? Because if it's just thermodynamics, if everything degrades, then how do things ever get created? Right. So
that's the amazing thing too when you look at instincts, and like it's like what you're kind of talking about is a primary instinct of like what makes the frog jump off the lily pad the minute the hawk starts to come, like right. Before the hawk thinks it, or all the fish turn in the pool at the same time.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Those synchronizations are important, but it's also your systems, like how your heart is a pacemaker, and how your internal organs work on the same rhythm together, and your sleep cycles, your circadian rhythms. There's so much to it. It's really an incredible field.
I think there was a thing in biology class where they had two petri dishes, and they had heart cells, and they're beating at different patterns, and the closer they got them together, they go
communicate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely it. So what I'm looking for is that pattern between two people, instead two kind of oscillating systems. There is because that's what fighting is finding that rhythm and that pace, and so how does that happen? why does it happen in our brain? So that's what I'm after right now.
Do you think it can happen in that short a time? Like, I mean, in the course of a fight, per se?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you find the rhythm of something and you really figure out your opponent's timing, your fight is going to go extremely well.
Aren't we? I mean, because what I'd always thought, and like and talking to you and learning from you, it had been two primary things, you know. And Scrape and I were just talking, and he brought it up. He's like, "That's some Genghis shit." And I'm like, "Absolutely, man." And that was talking about, you know, thresholds of and not just pain or anything like that, but thresholds of like, here's where somebody's quit button is,
right?
And making your quit button
unreachable,
impossible to find,
right?
You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? And so that was one thing, but then the other aspect of how to impose like everybody's got their rhythm. I don't know. I talk about it a lot, and I always use Diego as as my example, and I think he's a fantastic example just because he's a very uncommon human. Like that's a. I mean, you might think you know some different people, but Diego Sanchez is a different kind of dude, and one of the ways that is so different is like I've seen guys that I thought outskilled him in maybe all three disciplines of striking, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu, that I've seen him just smash.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think a couple things about his belief is one, and then that he doesn't let a rhythm happen. It's
right.
like you better be able to keep up with him, and if you can't, I don't care how good you are, your game will never come to pass.
Right. So if you can't control his rhythm, then you're going to have a really hard time
Right.
because his rhythm is a very high-paced
So
rhythm.
how does that differ from the idea you're talking about you're still talking about interrupting somebody's rhythm then?
Well, I'm actually acquiring it. How does it even get acquired? Because what you're doing is you're trying to find a rhythm. So with somebody like Diego, if you've got a real high-paced cardio machine like a person can be, then keeping up with him might be a possibility. But if you're able to be strong enough and hold him down and shut down that movement and lock
Right.
it down, your rhythm is now taking over the fight. So he can't do his rhythm anymore. You're making him slow down. You're using techniques to slow him down. So how do you find that in a stand-up fight? How do you find that it's easier in grappling, I think, because you can really get a feel for people.
Yeah.
Stand-up fights, the rhythm's always changing and stuff, but you can feel when people are stepping wrong, stepping left, stepping right, moving forward, moving back. When they're moving, when they're going to come, when they're going to leave, you can really get a sense of when and where they're moving, and then you can put your shots in accordingly. And it's not just for that kind of fighting. It's shooting. It's small unit versus small unit, tactic stuff. So there's a lot to it.
Does he talk about that in the book about
no, none of this
military
is,
maneuvers?
No, not at all. This is all just science, straight science stuff. I'm bringing it into the combat realm.
Right. Yeah, that's when you talk about the striking rhythm, like there's so few guys that have that. I think that are like that.
Yeah.
And with grappling, I always think about it, and people are like, well, what's the difference with a black belt and a blue belt or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. And I said, I just think it's you have a feel. I have a better feel.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
My body sensitivity is such that you're never going to be able to outskill that. Like
Right.
you have to just have mat time after mat. But then that being said, there's some guys that come in and they have it right
They
away.
pick it up quick, yep.
And a lot of times I think with the American wrestler you see that. Like
Right.
those guys are so savvy, but they've got a lot of mat time also.
Exactly.
But to extrapolate that, put it on the striking, now you have not only like 360-degree movement, you have like 720-degree movement because you've got both bodies, but then you really have every other dimension too. So you have an infinity of like how to get somebody's feel, and that's why it looks like Anderson Silva's in the Matrix.
Right.
That's what I think.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. The way he processes motion, exactly right. Is he gets a feel for your timing. You notice that he has hard fights when he can't do that. He'll get everybody's, he's boring, he's this and that.
Right.
But when he has hard fights, it's because he's not processing the motion correctly. He's not able to finally get that click. And when he can, you get fights like where he fought Forrest, where he was just able to move an inch at a time and get it.
Now, with all that too, sorry about that. My phone is
No worries.
at large. What do you think about? People say when they see guys fight that they really like, and it's guys that like I've had the pleasure to be able to train with or whatever, and there's an off night or something, and you hear that a lot, off nights or whatever, but it's a real thing. But like I don't process as cerebrally as you nearly, but I'm like, on different days there's different fighters, and that's why any fighter on any day is a dangerous guy.
Absolutely.
Because you don't know who's walking in. And you've seen like Cowboy get lured into a fight that he shouldn't be in when he's way better than the dude in all these other realms. And it's like you just don't know who's coming. Maybe there's a savage coming in, and then maybe he's more reserved some days.
Right, and that's why consistency, I think, is very hard for a fighter. And if you notice, the real champions that stay there are that. They're consistent. They can consistently show up as the same guy over and over again. And even if they squeak it out, their consistency performing at that level, they've learned how to flip their switch and do the right things at the right time.
What do you do as a coach, trying to get a guy dialed into beat? And when do you start noticing that in a camp or when you just meet an athlete, like when you meet Jones, when he comes in the first time and you kind of see what that rawness is, after he did that to Stephan Bonner, and then you go, okay, well here's all the hurdles that I've got as a coach to look at, or how do I keep them consistently dialed in?
Right. Well, a lot of that comes from the fighter, the way they compete. Some people compete differently. And so as long as you have a guy that's mentally, it's all mental. As long as you can mentally deal with the pressure, mentally come in and do the same thing over and over, that's what really matters. You can show them technical stuff, but that's not going to keep them consistent. You can show somebody very, very technical, but they fold under pressure. They do these things. It's just finding the right formula.
Yeah.
Some people just luck into it. Some people, it takes a long time for them to actually figure out the right formula. It can be, listen, I'm surrounding myself with negative people. And before the fight, everybody's like this, that, and the other thing, and it just puts you in the wrong frame of mind. So once you find the formula that's successful, you just got to stick with it. Even if it's not every single time, let's say it's 98% of the time, that's important. If the formula isn't working, you got to change it. And it's everything leading up to the fight that you do. That's what you have to analyze.
It's crazy for me. Like, my mind just wanders when you're saying that, because I know, like, I think about, like Isaac Valley Flag and him really turning that corner. Like the last couple of years, it's just been like, for me, just like really encouraging, and like it just brings you a lot of joy, when you see a guy like come into his own and go, I'm not getting big brother by anybody. I'm here. I put the work in. Fuck you. I'm going to smash you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right,
it's
right,
rad.
right.
Not that Isaac's like that. He's the sweetest guy out there, but you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
But then I think he's a head case too, I think about all the different beautiful, sensitive creatures that walk through your gym.
Right.
And then you keeping, not that it's even your responsibility, but that you've got a real stake in because of your desire to see them perform well.
Yep.
Keeping all these fucking animals dialed in. How the fuck do you go about that and not go crazy?
That's a very good question. It's part of it is the joy of seeing that, turning the corner. Cub Swanson and Isaac Valley Flag both really. You see, okay, here's the
and
formula.
They're boyfriends.
They are,
strangely enough,
and they love each other
at the same time.
Exactly. There you go. It's everybody's got to have a pair.
Yeah,
got to get somebody paired together. But I think that's part of it. And even more than to see them succeed, which is what they want, I just like to see them grow. Like to see them come in as one thing and grow into this other thing is just phenomenal, because it really is. I mean, there's something to it. In our society as Americans, I think we lose a little bit of the fire changing you. The fire is important.
Right.
These obstacles are important because everybody wants to be equal, which is great. But you have to go through, when you go through these processes, you're in a different place than they are.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
You're better than they are.
Now, I wouldn't say you're better.
Yeah, bullshit. You're fucking better. The warrior class of person is better. I mean, if you're not, I'm sorry. People are better than you.
Because there's people that are certainly smarter than the warrior class.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
It's true. It's just different, though. It's
right.
like what you say is so true. It's like you've gone through these fires that nobody, and you've gone through them not only in the gym, but that nobody, your family, loved ones, nobody understands that. The guy that's never dieted, he doesn't understand while he's sitting waiting for his Big Mac.
Right,
like,
exactly.
You've done things that are unattainable to the mind, even for other people if they haven't been there.
Right.
I remember Joey he got all pissed at the mountain one day, pissed off because we were doing buddy carries up switchbacks or something, and he was running those stairs. And he's like, listen, if you guys aren't fucking one of the 6 guys running the stairs, how about just keep it to yourself? I know, blah, 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 but unless you're doing this, I don't want to. And you get like that as an athlete. You're like, if you're not in this fire right now with me, I don't want to hear it.
Right. And so that, I think, as long as it's doing in a growth way, because it can be negative too. You can get in that fire and it can just burn you up and you get bitter and angry or whatever, and you know people like that. But as long as there's somebody guiding you that's been there, that's guiding you through it, bringing you to a better place, I think that's very important. But it makes you in this different place, and it gets hard to relate to people, like you're saying, who haven't been there. And that goes for everybody. Soldiers, a lot of people go through that. And even different levels of soldiers, the guy that's in the Air Force and doing mechanic stuff in Afghanistan, he still has an experience that we'll never have, but he's not the same as the Marine that's walking down the neighborhood, who's not the same as a spec ops guy who's in every 3 months just going crazy. So everybody has these different experiences. I think the important thing with all of them is that as long as they're growing experiences, as long as you're getting something out of them, that's the real key. And so the martial arts, to me, and I guess that's my motivation, is to take that process and make you a better person. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be a saint, right? You might do whatever you're going to do, but at least it should give you some wisdom. The process should give you some wisdom.
Yeah. It's funny, like when Little John was here earlier, and there's 2 things. I remember once you told me, I was like, God, I just don't know how long to keep doing this or that. And you go, are you having fun training? Because if you're not having fun training anymore, Tait, that's the time when you just stop for a while and reassess what you're doing, because I need you to have fun in this life. And, it put it in such a simple way that was so powerful and so right on. And then I remember looking at Little John's face every day, whether it was like in wrestling practice or something like that, and everybody's dying, and it's that guy has got a smile on his face, ear to ear. Anytime you catch him, if you can catch him without a smile on your face, you've met him at a moment that I've never seen. And I just thought, we're all like, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it,
right?
And that's what if you're delivering mail, if you're like, it just seems like that's the only important thing that spreads those positive vibes. And then when you go back to that synchronicity and talking about that, and if the whole world is vibrating at 480 megahertz or whatever they say it's vibrating at, and you're out of sync with that, it's like it behooves you to be in appreciation so you can achieve those levels and you can work towards your own greatness, which will spread to everything.
Exactly. And that's why setting a culture in your gym is so important, because you have to have that synchronicity. If you come into the gym and everybody's negative and bad-mouthing everything all the time, then that's what you're going to be, because you are who you surround yourself with. But if you're like, well, we're a bunch of goofballs, you know that better than anybody. We have a great time. Everybody's laughing all the time. We're not stabbing each other in the back. It's a positive place. You can leave money. It'll still be there when you get back. That kind of a place is important, because that vibe and that culture is real and important. If you're going to make a warrior culture, then make it to mean something and make it that's important.
I think the thing that all the guys that have ever had the pleasure of working with you leave with anyway, if they got a head in their brain in their heads at least, is that, which sometimes not so much, but even I got the message of that, these are guys that you can count on. And that's the thing. And everybody asks me all the time, wherever I go, they go, God, that's a real hotbed down there in that Albuquerque. And they go, what is that about? All those guys are so tough down there. And I go, well, guys come from a lot of other places now. And I was thinking back, and I was like, but the toughest guys are right here, And I go, there's not a lot else to do is one thing. And you get proud of your dirt. You know what I mean? Like 100%. This is where I'm from, and this is it, and I'm going to protect this. Right. And then there's a fidelity that exists in mixed martial arts. Like there's a fidelity and a consciousness that it's hard. I think that I don't look down on other people for not having. I feel sorry for them that they don't have that, because it's been such a important aspect of my life in that way.
Right. But I mean, I guess it's important that everybody have their own thing. And if you're in a warrior, right, you know what I mean? And if you're in a warrior class, then those are the things that you should find important. What you're talking about, you should find important. Otherwise, it gets negative real quick, because warriors have a lot of power. And if you're not going to have some kind of positivity to it, if you're not going to be a laid-back human, then you probably shouldn't be a warrior. You can go into merchants. There's plenty of jerk CEOs all over the place, and have fun with that.
Be a stockbroker.
Go have fun with that. But if you're going to be a warrior, I'm not talking about like I make calls and I run this town war. I mean, actual like,
right.
Are we in the jungle going to fight each other warrior? Then be a good human because you got that's the bottom line, right? Because we can take anything.
And I think
away
that's
from
why
you.
I think I don't know. That's why a lot of people go to. There's certainly the guys that are just angry dudes that are like, I just want to punch somebody, and they get in the gym and there's that. But I think moreover, there's not that. I think moreover, there's guys trying to find a deeper aspect of themselves that are going in there to test themselves in this very special and unique way, and that they appreciate their fellows that allow them to have that kind of energetic connection with another human to operate at that kind of high level of intensity with,
What's really cool is when you get those angry guys that will just want to smash the world, and you can flip those guys around, channel that stuff, get them over it, and see that person that would have been doing damage to the world now doing something positive, helping people out, even if he's a self-centered.
How many guys have you had like that you've touched?
I can't even count. I mean, it's been 20-some years since I've been doing it, so... but a lot of them, and it's
How about
good.
favorite athletes you work with? Can you say names?
No, because as soon as I get to the gym, I'll be like, I love so and so, and then 8 other dudes will be like,
and then it's an impossible question. There's so many. I mean,
I don't, and it sounds stupid, and you're so political, Greg, but I really don't have like a favorite. There's not one person that I'm like, this is the guy. Yeah. It's like your kids, man. Like you couldn't say, unless you're an ass, you can't be like, I love Mark, but Frank's an ass, and I would
Frank,
never.
the way he behaves,
right? No, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder why he's like that. That's because you're like that. It's
even regardless. I went we all went paintballing for Cowboy's birthday a while back, and I was going out from there, and it was like, and just like Keith and Isaac and Cowboy and Leonard and all that, and it brought back memories of Rashad when he was here too, and like what a real fucking gentleman, like and that smile, that kind of like all of that stuff, and thinking of kids and like and all the like all the water that's gone by and all that, and like and just the kind of class and aplomb that everything got handled in. I think there's a lot of admiration for you in that hard spot, because like it is a hard spot. It's like at that time I was just leaving the gym, and Keith's there, and John's just coming in the gym, and Jesus, man, that was like it's like growing pains. It's like it was the first time that anybody had to really look at stuff, at issues like that about, we got 4 main light heavies, and they're all contenders or whatever, or like with the lightweights, it was the same thing. And like, you never had to set down a precedent before. That was it. That was, and seeing that done with love and growth and like a kindness and concern for other people been huge,
Yeah, it was a very trying time, and you're either going to take negatives from that or positives from that. So, it's one of those things that you have to. You got to make decisions. You got to take a hard look at what you've done, and and you can't get through this life without hurting somebody, and just trying to do as little of that as possible. That's my thing. It was a tough spot, and we came out stronger for it. Like when George fought Carlos, no problems with anybody. Everything was normal, good. Everybody knew what to expect, and that's the real thing. And I say this often. One of the best fighting quotes ever came from the Batman movie with the Joker in it, not the Jack Nicholson one, who I love, but the one Batman's, Heath Ledger. Yeah, the Heath Ledger one.
Yep.
He gave one of the best speeches about fighting ever to the Two-Face guy in the hospital room. And he said, no matter how crazy the plan is, as long as it's a plan, nobody panics.
Yeah.
It's when there's no plan that everybody loses their mind. And so
great.
And that's it. As long as you have a plan, and that's why you game plan in fights for so many things, and you get people mentally ready. As long as there's a plan, as long as you're going to say, listen, in this situation, you're going to suffer. So get ready. You're going to have stuff crashing into you. Get ready. Here's what's going to happen. Get ready. As long as you can give a person that, and they're warrior, they can be like, okay, this is what I expect.
It's not outside the norm.
Right.
This is all within the realm of reason.
Exactly.
This is going to happen.
And that's why you break people down so much, like on your mountain runs and stuff. I have to get people to where your core is exposed, and then make that normal. Yep. So in a fight, when your core gets exposed, you're like, okay, it's not, again, I did this last week. There's no panic because everything's in that plan.
There's another one I love is you got to become comfortable where other men are uncomfortable.
That's it.
If you can live in the fire and that's your your home, then other guys are going to get burned and you're going to smile.
Exactly. And that mentality, I think, is one of the reasons that we're so successful.
Yeah.
And just understanding that panic is your enemy. So what you do is you do everything you can. You make sure you're in physical shape, whatever you can do to avoid panic. And then deep at your core, when you understand, okay, panic's what I'm trying to avoid, when situations arise outside of fighting or whatever that should have, like how many people have come to me and said, oh my God, this happened or that happened, and I'm always, okay.
Or every new generation, the sky's always falling.
Right, exactly.
The banks are about to take everybody's money. Or X, Y, Z. It's always been either the worst time or the best time, depending on people's emotional construct at that moment.
You got it.
It's never any different. It's not like we got to chase down pigs to eat tonight.
Right.
We're going to be fine. We're going to the grocery store. It's like it's always been something.
Right, exactly. And just there's that real popular keep calm and carry on thing. I think of Churchill's. But, I mean, there's something to that. That's a warrior mentality.
Yeah. What do you think about when it just struck me, like, most guys come out and they fight the same way. Mm-hmm. Like, there's, and then what I'm talking about is there's slow starters and there's guys that are hyper aggressive right away, right?
Right.
And some guys, how many times you heard it, until I got punched, I'm not in the fight. Or,
right.
Well, sometimes you only get that one time then and you're asleep.
Right.
So there's that as a problem. But what do you think about the benefits, the cost deficit of? And can you change a fighter from a slow starter into a savage, aggressive fighter?
You can, but it has to come. It's kind of like dealing with an addict. The choice has to come from them. So you can try to give everything you can to them to guide them on that path, but ultimately it's up to the fighter.
And is there a better way? Is
to
one
do that?
better than the other?
Well, no, it depends on what's more effective. To me, it's about effectiveness.
Okay.
So if you're an effective slow starter,
right,
but you always win, why would you change?
Yep.
But if you're
like George is pretty measured all the time,
right? Yeah, he stays at a very good. He finds his rhythm.
Vanderlei Silva, not so much.
Right, exactly. So if it works for you, stick with it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work for it, then you need to change it. And so what's admirable to me as a fighter is when you're able to change it. And the example everybody will know is Ali. Ali had two different Alis. He had the early style of always dancing, and then he had the grinding style where he would absorb punishment. He would get him into those later rounds, Ali's alley they would call it, and just be able to break the guy down. So seeing a fighter that can redefine themselves like that is very impressive. But that's what you need to do.
And there you're talking about eras, though. You're not talking about fight to fight. You're talking about the man became different.
Right,
and he found out he could take a beating, and so he started. That was his strategy. But I guess more what I'm talking about is like you take a guy, like Isaac, and you go, okay, he's going to stay covered up. He's going to get into a little bit of a scrap. Maybe he'll lose the first half of the first round, and then he's going to turn on and get into his groove and feel it. And then, okay, well, the next fight, what we want to do is we want to come out and we want to attack him hard right away, and then the next fight slow again, like that kind of a cadence.
Oh, if you're doing, because you can do that game plan to game plan for sure. If your game plan is okay, you always need to be right in his face, and that's what you start training.
Right.
So it depends. Now there's utility, right? Your fighter's preferences, and sometimes the two will not mesh. Like if this guy is always going to be a fast starter or a slow starter, it can be hard to try to get them to do something else. So you have to figure out what works in their construct to be most effective.
Yeah, because they do become that. It seems like to me anyway. They get their dogma becomes strong as this is how he is.
Right. So it can be challenging, but that's why I love my job.
What do you think about the Matrix? And what I mean is like what I see more, like Jesse Owens is as fast as a guy could run was 1939 or whatever when he ran in front of Hitler. And then 4 years later, the guy was faster. 4 years later, a guy. And so and then with the, I don't know, like in the stunt world, I see a lot of guys that do that are trickers and stuff, and they do crazy Matrix type shit, like 580s from standing. It's like their legs are on springs,
Right.
And they see this stuff on the internet and they mimic it. And I just start thinking about all this stuff, and it makes me go crazy. Like when Jones first came into the gym, and I saw him do that to Stefan, and like his throws are great. And you don't see aerial shows like that where he's got another huge man in the air over his head, and then his striking was really exquisite, like elbows, like. And I go, hey, where'd you learn your striking? Because he's in the woods in upstate New York, and so great wrestling, awesome guys. I know they go to Holland or to San Francisco. You guys are traveling all over to do this stuff. And he goes, YouTube. And I was like, you son of a bitch. Like, how dare you? Like, but he's like, that and I believe. And then, so this internet thing that's new to us is like changing the world in a in such a fast way. It's expedited the learning curve for everybody. And now you see Pettis doing stuff like Johnny Dodson moves like that.
Yep.
You see these few guys are starting to eke out and move like it's an actual kung fu movie. So stuff that we thought was ridiculous as grinders, like leg kick, right overhand, all this stuff. And now there's a lot of different fancy stuff that was you thought, well, that's just silly movie stuff that is now you're seeing in the UFC.
Right. Well, there's two very important points to that. And the first is that we're building on what people have done in the past. When you see somebody, it's like the motorcycle guy can do a flip, you know it can be done, then you just start building on it. Everybody figures out how you do it, and then you start building on it. So you're in this constant process building. And the second thing you've touched on is what is the paradigm shift for martial arts. I mean, this is the reason. So the argument always goes, are we on the most cutting edge for human combat right now? Right. Is this time in human history the most? And a lot of people bring up Pancrase because Pancrase was around forever.
Sure.
And they certainly did do excellent things, but Pancrase was always limited to Greece and whoever else they pulled in.
Yep.
And there are more people alive right now than there were all throughout history. Like, we have more people living right now than the entire...
In this moment in 2013.
Right, in this moment in time, right. You could stack them all up, and there's still not going to be enough. So what you have is the aggregate. You have tons of people all over doing what we're doing all over the world, and we can access it. We can access all of it, and that has never been done before. So the internet has never been done. Videos have never been done. Airplanes have never been done. The world is now a small place. So there's no doubt we're at the most exciting time to be alive as far as a human and as far as a martial artist. And I'm not just talking about hand to hand, weapons, guns, the whole 9 yards. We're doing this everywhere. And so there's this learning curve and this access to information that we've never had before. And it's very, very cool to be a part of. It's very cool to be pushing on the cutting edge of it, and it's also cool to look back and see how far we've come in such a short time. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I guess it goes back to my Diego Sanchez thing, or John to saying that is that it's belief, and people see it. Like first they believe it. Those are the real visionaries, right? That believe it without see. They're like, yes, I can do a double backflip.
Right.
And they've never seen it or heard about it. They just want to do. That's a different dude. And then there's people that see it on and they go, I can do. And like in a movie like Anderson Silva, I think it was Tony Freakland, where he does like an uppercut elbow.
Yeah.
And Cage Rage or something in England, right?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, yeah, I saw it in a movie a month before, and so I just practiced it into a pillow with my wife, and then I knocked him out with it.
Yeah.
And it's like. That's an amazing athlete, right?
Well, that's the other thing is these super athletes can do that. I mean, I'd be hard damn pressed to jump off a wall, backflip, and hit somebody. I'd be hard pressed.
You could do it, but I wouldn't. Let's be honest. That stuff, when you talk about technology and all that stuff, and you talk about being an American and what that means and all that stuff, what are your thoughts about that? About when you have to go through, you're a traveling man, and your personal rights are completely violated every time you fly, and they dehumanize you taking your shoes off. Like, what are your thoughts about all that and where we are going as far as that?
I'm pretty laid back about it. I understand that everything's in balance. So if that's going to keep my plane from blowing up, actually, if you can show me. Now, of course, there's arguments, yes and no. Right.
It's like you don't use your cell phone at the gas pump. You Google that. Never once did a gas pump blow up because of a phone.
Right. But I guess... a lot of times it's the plan. You know what I mean? As long as everybody's okay with the plan, like we are going to do some kind of security so that hopefully we catch somebody with a big giant knife.
Right. It all seems like pretend to me.
Yeah, and I think in a way it is, but we have to do something. Like that's the thing is like, are you just going to let dudes walk onto the plane no problem?
I was thinking something functional. Like what I think is it's a money grab. And I think somebody's retarded uncle is like, hey, my son Jimmy needs a job, so we're going to make Homeland Security, and he's going to put up these machines that we don't know what they do, and we're going to make people walk through them and pretend that we know what we're doing. And in the meantime, a dude suffering from diabetes because he's 480 pounds is patting down some old lady in a wheelchair. Like, that's the reality of what America is right now. Right. When you could have a bad motherfucker that's a special ops dude with a 45 sitting on the plane just watching people, and nobody's going to you know what I mean? It's like there's that.
Right.
And then there's what we do, and that doesn't work.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, in order to debate that, I would have to get the numbers. I would have to see where are we putting our money? Where is it allocated? Where is this? Where is that? So that I can
don't worry about your interior freedoms in America being assuaged in some way.
Not really, because it's. I mean, I would worry if it gets bad. I guess. Like if they're knocking
What's bad?
on
Boston's bad. 3 people is all that died. Just 3.
Yeah.
We kill more than that all the time.
No,
Kids
it's
and everybody.
it's true.
3 people died, and they stripped people naked out of their homes. Illegal search and seizure. Military force in the streets.
Right. If that in fact happened, then people need to answer for that because you can't do that. Like that's can't be done. There's that old saying, if you is it Franklin that said those people who give up their liberty over their
don't
fear,
deserve either.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I'm for that, but I also know that the reality of the situations are hardly ever what we think they are. Like being on the ground running, it's kind of like the guys that sit back and say, "Well, if I was in that fight, I'd have just punched him in the face."
Yeah.
When you got that gun and there's a guy and you don't know where he is and he's going to kill you, and you can be doing some squirrely stuff because you know what, you got a wife and kid to come home to, and so do all the people the warriors that are with you.
True story.
So, I mean, where do you draw that line? Where do you let a guy? There has to be consequences when you cross that line.
Certainly.
But at the same time, like I know a lot of those guys that are chasing those guys, and they're some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And
absolutely.
And
I'm not about not pumping that dude full of bullets.
Right.
But what I am saying is that
you can't just go around,
once you strip his rights, Miranda rights away, or any rights away, I've also said it's okay to strip mine away.
Right. No, and that's a slippery slope.
Slippery fucking
as long as it's, and even the Miranda, there is a thing in there that says if it's imminent danger to the public, you don't have to read a Miranda. There are loopholes.
Right.
Because then you're going to get back to like Lincoln and what Lincoln did when he did habeas corpus stuff. So there's these loopholes and there's these gray areas, and sometimes I think people play that. So you have to look. It's got to pass the common sense test.
Yeah.
That's what it's got to do. Yeah. It was one of my great friends who's an operator. He said that anything that I do has to pass the common sense test. Like
by an operator, this is a trained,
a person that
agent.
Yes, exactly, an angel of destruction.
Yep.
And one of the best people I've ever met in my life. And he says, things get when you're in Iraq, things get crazy, but what you're going to do has to pass the common sense test. Like, does this make sense? Why can I articulate why I'm going to do this? And as long as he could, he didn't have a problem with it. And I think that's important because it doesn't always go down the way you want it to go down, especially when you got life on the line.
You got to err on
flying.
the side of caution. I mean, it's like if your buddies are dying and
But the flip side to that is, like you're saying, like you just can't go into people's houses and like everybody out, and naked.
Yeah, we're not in Iraq,
right? Yeah. So that has to pass the common sense test, and if you don't do that, then there needs to be consequences. Yeah. But I would hesitate before I pass out a lot of judgment on that stuff because I know how I've been there and I've seen how complicated and intricate it is. And I'm very cautious before I say this is the way it should be.
I'm not in any way saying that the way specific agents are acting is out of the line. But what I'm saying is that whoever gave them the orders,
right, yeah, they need, and those are the politicians. The politicians, right?
That's the next movie I want to see. I want to see a movie with these guys that are special, that are Delta Force Recon that come together and they go, you know what, we're going to get the people that put us in here for corporate interests, not for American rights, to benefit themselves and their billion-dollar friends, and we're going to do a hit movie on them. What do you think? You want to get in there?
I think so, but I might do the movie where the billionaire friends pay me a lot of money to do like the other
son
movie.
Of a bitch! I know you would die broke first.
I would.
Fernando Chian, he says hello to you.
Fernie's the man.
And,
I love Fernie. He's such a good dude, man. Yeah.
What's you met him on that show out in Boston?
I met him on the set of Warrior.
Yeah, Warrior.
Yeah.
Wasn't that out in Boston or Philly or somewhere?
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah. I think. Oh, I can't even remember. I've been so many places, but yeah. And what a good guy that guy is,
rad,
man. He's such a good dude. Great stunt guy. Can't say a bad thing about him. I love him to death.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, I made a lot of great friends there on that set that I kept up with over the years.
Cool.
The director Gavin O'Connor is directing another movie now, and he's just an amazing person. I love watching him work. I just like to go on movie sets and watch these guys do what they do.
It's crazy,
amazing.
Man. Like those directors that are like real visionary that. And I don't know. I never told you about that. I watched that movie. It's like I was so scared when I went into that movie because I was like, this is some cheesy.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that's what a lot of us. It made me cry, that movie.
That's
it
great.
was beautiful, and seeing your fingerprints all through it was beautiful. And like anybody that's trained with you saw all that. Man, Your fingerprints are all over that film, and what I mean, right now, man, gives me goosebumps talking about beautiful and the tributes to Mask, and just it's crazy. What a beautiful homage, really, to mixed martial arts and what that was, and the struggle of what that can be, and the beauty and the everything that's all wrapped up in there.
Yeah, it was a great movie and a great experience, and we're always thankful to Mask for so many things that he did for all of us.
What was your best thoughts of him?
Oh man, I don't have one.
Favorite
I got a bunch
memories.
of them. Shoot, we'd be here all day doing that, brother. I just always loved. He's like John Dotson. Actually, John Dotson and Mask reminded me of each other. Like you were saying, you just wouldn't catch him without a smile. And he had dark moments. We all do. But when he saw you, he was genuinely happy to see you. Like he was.
There's nobody else in the world but you.
Exactly, and he just loved it. And he'd grab on you, and he'd ask for advice, and he'd do his shtick.
Boisterous and loud.
Yeah, and just everything that I like about like loud Americans. Like he was a personification of everything positive about loud Americans.
Yeah, loud but full of love.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? There's nothing douchey about that motherfucker.
Exactly.
Just full of and spreading that.
Right.
One of my favorite things he ever said was that thing, I might not touch 1 million people, but I might touch somebody that touches 1 million people, that kind of that's a guy that got it, man.
He really did. And I mean, you can't even we could sit here again all day and talk about all the positive stuff that he did. Like I owe him and Scrape and Punk. Those guys are amazing to me. I love them to death, all of them. And those are my family for life. And they're such great guys. You can't say enough good things about them. It really
the coolest thing too is I look at that like. What this came out of, like this podcast thing, is that Rogan was like, well, I started thinking about it when we'd all travel around and we'd just talk on planes and in cars and after gigs at the hotel or whatever, and we'd just shoot like going to nightclubs and shit, never really my steez. Like I didn't dig it a lot. But what I loved is like when Ari and I would sit around until 3 a.m. afterwards and just talk or you know what I mean? And that kind of thing, he was like, you're having these uncommon situations and you meet these characters and he's like, people in Indiana aren't hearing this.
Right.
Like they're not privy to this. And he's like, it's important, I think, maybe to do this, Tait, and I really want you to look at doing it. And I was like,
cool.
I was like, all right, maybe. And then it's like a little work. It's like you got to go out of your way a little bit. You got to and I'm lazy. I'm sloppy and lazy. You know what I mean?
Nope.
And I'm not doing any of that very well. But I was like, well, maybe I'll do that, and then it'll make me connect with my friends too more, and mentors and people I'd like to meet and all that stuff, and have an avenue for that. Because I think the thing you're talking about with the internet, it is so important to.
It is.
For that growth to happen, we're not so dissimilar.
Right, exactly.
And that's what Mask would bring together. That's what John brings together. Is that, I mean, that smile is uniting.
Right. That's so important. Yeah, it's really cool to just be, especially in today's world where the media is so negative all the time. I think it would be nice to see some positive stuff. Yeah. Somebody did a nice YouTube compilation the other day on a Russian desk, what do they call it, on the cars, dashboard cams. And it's all these guys helping out with spare tires and literally helping old ladies across the street. And I was like, isn't that nice? Because usually people tune in, hey, let's see the wreck.
Well, and it's tuned in, it's like, it's almost ominous when you see it.
Right, you know something's going to happen.
Acts of kindness.
Right, and that was so cool. Like, stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Thank you, Pendulum Swing, for bringing our culture back to that kind of stuff.
There's a video, I think it's Alan Watts is the fellow that narrates it, and he was a professor, and then he gave a bunch of talks, and it's, and then somebody put videos to it all, but he's talking about, when students ask him what to do and where to go from here, what is it that I should do? And he's like, what's your heart's desire?
Right.
And follow, and all the men that I admire the most, it's like a message like that.
Right.
It's like, follow your heart's desire. Don't worry about the money. Do whatever you have to live, of course. But but at the same time, if you follow that and you're into it, somebody else will be into it. And then that'll. And talking to Little John, he was one of my first podcasts, and going, you're a midget.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere for you to fight on the world stage. We can go to Japan, or we can fight in freak shows.
Right.
But there's not really. It didn't exist.
Right.
He didn't stop. He didn't waver.
Right.
Kedzie, a couple of girls I talked to, and there's no place for women. And up until like a couple months or weeks before he turned around, you know, the you know, and I thank God for the hypocrite. Like, I love being a hypocrite when I can get shown another way and have an about face and go, I was wrong about my thinking. And I go, the hypocrite that is Dana White, when he looks at it and he goes, you know what, we are going to have women in here. I was wrong. Yeah. And it's like, but for Kedzie, that didn't stop her before that wasn't happening.
Right.
You
She's
know?
fighting no matter what. Yep.
And that kind of thing. And like, and then walking around and looking at Scrape or Punk Ass and these guys and going, these guys are like a rock band.
Right.
Selling fucking T-shirts.
Yeah.
Like, none of it makes any sense.
No.
Where's that going to go?
Right.
You know what I mean? They're in the trunk at Grappler's Quest when we pull up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it's like,
they were.
That's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. And it did.
And they're billionaires.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but this whole thing, and it's not about being a billionaire.
Right.
It's about following your druthers, man. And
following
that.
Right.
And so that's really what I've liked, is because those are the people that I've been, you know, people are like, well, what's made the difference in your life, Tait? And what did you learn? Or where'd you go to school? Or I'm like, fuck, man, the people that I've been blessed, because I don't deserve it, certainly, but like the people that have been blessed to walk through my life, and that I've been awake enough for moments and lucid enough to be able to hear the message, that's the stuff, man.
Absolutely. And I think that, like, that kind of positivity, you just got to do it yourself. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I admire about you and about people like Mask and stuff. And do it where it's hard to do, man. You do it in the hood. You do it in places where we have this culture now in the what do you call it, the hood, in the poor communities. There's always been hopelessness there. I mean, New Mexico, where I was raised in the South Valley, you will not find a poorer place. Yeah. You're just not going to. Not in the United States. The reservation is going to be your only step down.
Yeah, I mean, I come out of Michigan, and you look at Detroit, and there's a lot of similarities.
It's the same. Every hood's the same. That's what they say. Every hood's the same. Now, there's meaner places where the drugs are stronger, and so there's more deaths. There's less mean places, but hoods are hoods. There's always hopelessness there. Yep. There's always, you don't know, that island looks great that you see on TV, but you don't know how to swim to get to that island.
That island
might be right.
Yeah, that might
be a million ways.
Doesn't exist to you.
Right. So the America you live in is, and there's no parent telling you. That's always my thing. Well, they have choices. You ain't got no choices because you got no parents telling you what's right and wrong. You're raised by your grandma, who's barely there, barely conscious when she's there. You're just a wild kid. No one is there telling you that stuff. But if you can get a guy or two in your life that is doing that is positive and saying no, you know, because the rappers aren't doing it now. The rappers,
it's ridiculous,
right? But because so before NWA came out, right, when we listened to rap, when we were angry kids in the hood,
KRS-One or something giving you a message.
Even like Grandmaster Flash, like all of those guys, it was all about how the hood sucks. Like, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. Here's what I see every day.
Yep.
And that's something that everybody on the outside can go, oh, man, you know, you do live with rats. Like, that does suck. You don't have any money to get gas to actually drive out of there. Like, you're trapped. You're trapped there. Then when NWA came out, they tapped into that anger, that, like, I am, you know what I mean? Yeah. This sucks, and I'm mad, and I'm taking control of my own environment. And then it didn't rebound from that. It was just like, well, now everybody's like, I got money, and I'm like,
right. Look at my rims.
Right. What are you talking about, dude? Like, you're owning your environment, but it's not in a way that's positive. Like,
and a degradation of every woman that they've ever met.
Right. Exactly.
And the whole thing.
And so, if you're gonna do that, that's fine.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Right. No, but if you're gonna do like that whole negative thing, that's fine, but that's not going to change because now everybody, all white culture outside of that, is immediately dismissive of you. It's like if you're going to try to talk somebody into being religious and you like scream at them with a Bible, or you come at them with science, and you're like, you're a moron, they just shut you off. Right. They're shutting you off. So you're not going. There's no positivity there. There's nothing saying, man, listen, here's my life. It sucks. What can everybody do to help out? And let's change the situation. You don't want to change the situation because I don't, you know what I mean? Nobody's helping them.
Well, then there's the ego that keeps it all coupled because I won't admit that this is bad even,
right,
or whatever.
Right. Well, or nobody's helped me so far.
Right.
So F y'all. You know what I mean? And that, I think that there needs to be a positive change there. Now, that's a lot harder, obviously, than it looks. But there have been people that have done it throughout history. I mean, from the big guys, Martin Luther King, all the way on up. There's been people there. But
how brave is that guy?
What a soldier! All those guys and everybody in that generation that took out Jim Crow. That's no joke, man. That's no joke.
I look at that stuff and I'm like, it didn't really give me pause. Like I don't know. I guess it was a while ago, like maybe 19-ish years ago or something. Mm-hmm. That I got locked up on this bank robbery charge, and it struck me a few years ago. I was talking to my mom, and I was like, "Man, how like it's just nice that mom can sleep at night and she doesn't wonder what's happening to me."
Right.
But if I were black, I'd be in fucking prison right now still.
Absolutely.
You know, like, and that's really a commentary to think of in this world. There's a friend of mine, he's writing a book on all the old stadiums that were getting shut down, and this was in like 2006 or something, and he's traveling from stadium to stadium before they all get bought out by Costco or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. And he's somewhere in Alabama or something, and they're in this little city outside of a main city. And he says, I'm just walking to get coffee, and I'm walking behind this old man, 65, 70 years old. And this black kid's coming up the street up in front of us, and he says, morning, nigger. He says, morning, sir. And it's as if it's common.
Yeah.
It's as if, and it's like what you're saying. It's like they can see the island, but it's like,
Yeah,
because I'm like, what, they don't have TV in Alabama?
Right,
like,
yeah,
how do they not know that is so unacceptable?
Right,
that
yeah,
they
right.
get, but it's just
you can't
how
swim
it
there.
is in those
yeah,
places.
well, and how can you swim there? I don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so, like, having that, because we had the Civil War, you free the slaves, then there's a huge rebound with Reconstruction, just terrible things that they did. KKK's in there, all the assholes are in there. And then they rebound again with what was effective was Martin Luther King. He was effective.
Yeah.
He came, and Thurgood Marshall, really, he was the guy in there fighting all those
But
battles.
he's walking in those places where he can get stabbed by any patron.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody's going to say shit. I mean, that's the daunting thing. I was like, here, this is in 2006 happening.
Right.
Juxtapose that to 30 years earlier or whatever.
100%.
This guy is a soldier, like, with a heart of steel.
Yep, 100%. All those guys were. And so that's cool, but they were positive. Like, I guess that's my point, is they were a warrior culture,
Yep.
and pacifism was the only tool that they could use, like Gandhi or before them. It's that there's a time and a place for it. And but their message wasn't negative, and it was positive, and they got a lot of stuff changed. Things are not as bad today. I'm not saying racism is alive and well. You're an idiot if you don't think
Right.
it's severe still, but it ain't as bad as Jim Crow.
It's not like that.
Ask your grandparents if you think it's as bad as Jim Crow.
Yep. Do you agree with this statement that the ruination of America was when we started letting women go to college?
That's right, 100%. That's right. We gave them suffrage, and that's, I think, what it really went down. Yeah, and that's another thing about why it's so hard to get anything done in a positive culture is it always gets eddied. You know, like when you're in a river and there's eddies.
Sure.
Like you hear black people talking about Jewish people or other black people. Like there's literally degrees of black people. If you're this black and
Right.
you're light skinned,
No, you're red bone.
right,
Yeah,
like,
or whatever.
What are you talking
Yeah.
about? You know what I mean? Like,
Excuse me.
I hate racism except for those light. Like, it's that you get eddied. Like, and every culture is the same. They all are like that. So it's so hard to get things done.
I mean, when I'm driving down the street and somebody does something that's not as up to my pleasing as it could
Yeah.
be, I'm like, is that fucking Chinese lady? You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking for that.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
And then I'm like, who is that talking in your head, Tate? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
right. And I think that's human nature, right? I mean, I think a lot of the reasons, if the Native Americans, when we first landed, all banded together, even later on, I'm talking
Really?
1800s, if they all banded together, we would have had a hell of a time.
Yeah.
But we were using one tribe against the other. They couldn't get along. Yeah. When they kicked the Spanish out, so let's talk about our own culture in New Mexico here. They kicked the Spanish out. How long did it take the Spanish to come back? 10 years, 20 years? They couldn't get along. They formed this coalition. They boot the Spanish out. Spanish are gone. Everything's fine. They can't get along. The tribes here in New Mexico can't get along for 10 years. Like 10 years, no one could lead them. No one could get along. They go back to that, and the Spanish just roll right back over them again.
Crazy.
Why is that? Because when they were together, they booted them out with no problem. If they would have banded together again, it would have been way worse. But all you got to do is get this guy to show you how to get to the Acoma tribe, and then the Acoma, you know what I mean? Like, and you can see it. They took each other out. It was that ununification. Think about all the Native Americans that were here. There was a lot of them. I know it doesn't look like them, but this whole continent had a ton of them. If they all banded together like we are banded together, that would have been a war. That would have been something to do. But they didn't. They were in little
And they fought
isolated tribes.
smarter. Like when we came over, right? Weren't we still lining up in rows?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we didn't fight smarter until we learned from the Indians how to do real guerrilla combat. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you think about how congenital that is, like it's just we're so tribal that it really takes like strong organization to overcome that, and strong message of unities and cohesion and stuff. It's not easy. So my hat's off to anybody. My lazy ass ain't doing it, but my hat's off to anybody that's trying.
Amazing.
Keep trying and keep being positive. That's all I can say.
What do you think about, like, you talk about synchronicity theory, and there's the theory that this is all just a computer program that people have made in the future, and that there's glitches now and then, and maybe that accounts for when you have a memory that just comes to you in a flash. That
Right.
What do you think of all that?
You got to show it to me. I'm a scientist. Like because then I can just start thinking of what if aliens came and aliens, not humans, made a construct.
It's just as plausible to me.
Right.
It's
exactly.
aliens.
Yeah. It really is. Like in all the like time travel stuff.
It's almost like that's the best answer there is, really. I think, as far as
if you don't know, you can just make everything up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's kind of all
Have your
true and
best
none of
story.
it's true. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, because we don't know. So I'm very happy in saying I have no idea, and I can't wait till we find out.
What do you think that is? I mean, it's like, as far as when you say there's a plan, it's like there's and we talk about everything moves, like the birds all move, and they all take a right turn at the same time. There's not a leader that turns, and then they all do it simultaneously. All this kind of stuff. So you look at that and simulation theory, if we're all just like a big video game that somebody's playing that came from the future or whatever, and we're their database, when you think about those kinds of things then, and you go, it's all based on fear. Like, if we all need a plan so I don't let the populace get out of control. As long as I have a plan, I can hold the populace together, right? It doesn't matter if it's a shit plan. I just need the plan. So when I look at like Thor, like that's my guy. I love Thor.
Yep.
You know, but when we're telling my little kids about Thor, because that's what thunder is, because I don't know what thunder is. So then he grows up and then, thunder is that. That's actually what it is verifiably. It's not just a story.
Right.
That's what we got as Jesus, and everything else now is what it seems like.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And so we're trying to assuage this fear of the unknown always as humans, and can't just embrace the mystery.
Right. And I think that's one great thing that science does, is science really embraces the mystery. I don't think you're immune to fear when you're a scientist, but I think that it allows you to look at things a little more objectively, and maybe a step back. And that's not to say that fear does dictate, and here's why fear dictates, is because we have evolved to have self-preservation. So self-preservation makes itself manifested through fear. Now, we're just tethered by that system, meaning that as social animals, you could be a fear of talking in front of people. That's not going to kill you, but you still have that fear that's tethered if you're an evolutionary psychologist kind of a guy. But I think that you need to kind of look as objectively as you can. Obviously, emotion influences everything we do. We're all the same construct. Right. But for me, science gives us the most of that, the most of, okay, how does this work? And I should be able to predict this. Okay, this didn't work. And so, and you can tell it works really well when these scientists have great ideas and they're completely wrong. Like they're completely wrong. That's when you know, okay, maybe there is something. Because you have these brilliant people that are so smart, they couldn't even wipe they would wipe their ass.
I was
with
thinking
me.
of Stephen Hawking's with that. Because you look at him and then what he produces, and then it's amazing.
Dude, all of those guys are just so just so crazy smart. And they're wrong. They're wrong. Like the day they do these experiments, and they're like, nope, negative.
And that's all they're doing. They're obsessed with it.
Right. And so that to me says, their science works really well. The experimentation and prediction and all of these things, the actual process is not perfect. But until you bring me a better system, right, because everybody can complain, but bring me a better system.
When you talk about fear as a throwback, as an evolutionary throwback into this, and that it's a very natural thing. I was talking to a friend of mine, he's a psychologist, the other day, and we're talking about sexuality, and he was talking about, basically, he's like, from what it looks like, everybody's, whether you're talking about homo or hetero, everybody's on, it's a line graph, and everybody falls in there somewhere, and things are more permeable or acceptable, societally or whatever in certain ways. And then also there's different imprints that happen on dudes' heads versus females, versus when they're sexualized first. Absolutely. There's a thing that's a stimulus for them that is that maybe more forever so with men than it is with women. They're more malleable, their minds in that way, I guess. But then he was talking about, and he brought up rape. He says, like that, he says, everything turns on a woman. Like when they've done I forget what test it was, but he's like, they show them guys and girls, they show them girls and girls, they show them rape stuff, they show them, shiny countertops in the kitchen, they show them, and there's these sensors that are hooked up that elicit an arousal response. And you think about that, and he says, I said, what is that about rape? Like, I hear that all the time. And he said, he says, I think it's an evolutionary throwback to where that was kind of the courting way for a while. Lubrication in that way made it hurt less, and so then that became an arousal point. I thought, that is a fucking horrific trip, if that's true. Yeah.
Well, and you never know what our ancestors had to go through. It's true. In our day and age, though, rape should not be good at all. That's
Shouldn't
the
be on
worst.
The menu.
No, that's the worst. Like, if you rape somebody, you should go eat a bullet. Like,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, you're done. Like,
it's a trip.
But yeah, that's what's crazy about evolution and what it really does to you is there's things that don't make sense. There are things that aren't. That's the biggest argument against intelligent design. Yeah.
Antagonist to any intellectual
capacity. Right. And that's evolution, because that's what our people had to go through to get to where we are. Is they had to go through these wars and wars and wars and wars. And I don't mean like literally like with armies, but I mean against nature, against each other, against all of these things. It's a son of a gun to survive. You can forget that living in our air conditioned stuff. Right. You can even forget that being in very poor communities around the world.
Well, and whatever it is, I mean, and your cortisol levels, I think, shift and adapt towards your environment, right?
Right, absolutely.
It's like things that you become that are normal are
right.
You step out of that. Like when I don't know, I haven't put gloves on and punched somebody. Like really, like I train with my guys sometimes, or if somebody's getting ready for something, but not like that.
Right,
and,
right.
I mean, and by that, what I mean is, not. I'm going to go up and lace
not
up in the gym every day. We're
right.
going to do a battle. We're going to put in mouthpieces because you need them because your teeth are going to chip. Otherwise, the whole thing. I haven't done anything that's been like adrenalizing.
Right.
And I went down and showed a couple friends the gym once. We went in there with Darren Prescott and Wade Allen, and they're like, it was awesome, and they loved it. And but I left there, and Darren's like, "How you feeling?" I'm like, "I feel like fucking sparring, man." And you get in that environment,
right.
you get drawn into it again, and it's like all those things finding homeostasis again.
Right, exactly.
The heart cells in the petri dish or whatever. But then leaving there, I was like, God, everybody would always say, "Man, that's so violent what you do." And it wasn't until that day driving home that I felt like that's a wicked, violent environment in that way from an outside. Yep. It was the first time I'd had like an outside perspective ever.
That's really cool. And that's cool that you can step out and say, yes, there are.
Such a trip.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that it's important to get out of your safety zones, to redefine how you look at things.
That's another thing I was going to ask you about, because you've seen this so much, and I don't know, in a small way, I get pieces of it about redefining yourself. About like, I remember when I first moved to LA, and it was like, and I had some successes as a MMA fighter before I left, and then fought in a few shows out there, and then I got on the Ultimate Fighter, and then all that. But like, who are you now? Like when I first got there, you're nobody. You're in LA. Who are you now? And then kind of like as a fighter, who are you now? Oh, and that's easy because there's a lot of accolades and it's cool. And like the little kids are going, oh, who's that guy, Mom?
Right,
I seen that guy,
right?
And whatever. And then you're not a fighter anymore. Who are you now?
Right.
And all that stuff. And how do you deal with that? Because psychologically, let me tell you, man, that's a fucking twist that happens. And then there's a lot of guys that stay into, and that was what I started battling with, was like, how do you not stay in too long?
Right.
Because that's ugly. You see guys that do stay in too long, and there's
right.
Latent brain damage and stuff that happens.
Absolutely.
And then they're trying to hang on in these little tiny shows. But even a guy as successful as Evander Holyfield, he's fighting at fairgrounds.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So how do you take any hand in that as a coach?
I try to. I think it's important that there are different avenues within the martial arts. Now, sometimes you get hooked on something and you're an addict, and you can't ever let it go, and that's addiction. And so if that happens to you, then you're going to pay the price that every addict has to pay. If you can't redefine yourself, for instance, even me as an MMA coach, I work a lot with the military stuff just to get out of. Well, I love helping the people that I care about, which is our military, very much, but to get out of MMA.
Yep.
But still do what I do. In other words, still deal with combat, still deal with strategy, still get in there. I go and I do that, which is very similar but very different.
Now, what have you been doing with that?
Just training, different military groups and stuff. But also coming up, learning a lot. Like I put on a white belt again and, teach me all these shooting protocols. Teach me this. How do you clear a room? Teach me this. Teach me that. Teach me this. So that and that makes me more effective. Now I know what they do, what they deal with better. So now I can think about it. And you go out there and you watch and you do whatever you need to do to get the experience for that. And so at that point, then you can be more effective. But that's completely out of my safety zone as far as what I mean? And that's great. So I love strapped on the white belt.
Yep.
And for the last, how many years I've been doing that. But it's a lot of fun. And so redefining yourself, even within your structure, I think is so important. There's that Fugazi song. It's my favorite Fugazi song of all time, Long Distance Runner. And that song is about that, about just making sure that you don't hang out with what you've already done.
Yeah.
But keep pushing, keep looking for new avenues, and that's important.
It keeps it fresh for sure.
Right. You have to stay inspired,
everything.
But you also have to remember that, like, if you hang out in one place too long, like the water gets
get moldy.
Yeah, you gotta flow on, and it doesn't mean you have to change the river completely, but you should change something about it.
Speaking of moldy water, what was going on? You were in Louisiana for a while. Tell us about that.
That's right. I was. I love Louisiana. We do that Fight Master TV show, which is
it airing yet?
No, it's coming out this. I don't even remember when the date is. This summer, in a couple months.
Sick.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know,
it was interesting.
Was Mossy out there and Joey.
Joey Villasenor were some assistant coaches, and it was me and Joe Warren, who I love to death, and Randy, who I love, and Frank. So basically, I got paid to coach and sit around and talk shit with my friends. It was so fun.
Did you ever go get alligator cheesecake?
No, I didn't. I had King's Cake, and I did a bunch of other stuff. But
there's some great places there, man.
Everywhere you eat, the hole in the walls in Louisiana are like amazing. We went to this place. I was like, whoa. We were in the hood, and it was some of the best food I ever had.
It's
I was
like
walls
walls made out of driftwood, basically, just eroding as you're sitting there.
Right.
And delicious food.
Right, and I'll tell you something else. I really like the culture of New Orleans. And so we were on the West Bank there, and the neighborhood wasn't that great that we were in. But when they had the Mardi Gras, they had the parades everywhere. Everybody was out. There was not a single fight, and everybody was drunk. And I said, in Albuquerque, that would last 15 seconds. If you had a parade through the South Valley and everybody got drunk, see ya. And I was raised in, don't come try to tell me it wasn't. I was raised in the South Valley. As raised in the South Valley as you can be. And I know that.
And it's not that that's not a violent place or scary in certain ways. It's a whole different kind of desperation there. Like you might get carjacked by a 12-year-old. But there's that stuff every weekend. En masse, these people, thousands of people, take to the streets. We did the red dress run. It was called when we were there,
right?
And it's like a running of the bulls of Pamplona,
right?
Except it's girls that are roller derby girls with wiffle ball bats with horns on their helmets, and I think they wear everybody's dressed up in certain colors. And they run down and they beat you in the ass with a wiffle ball bat. It's like a walking or running cocktail party.
Right.
And but like you said, there's no trouble. There's no police presence. It's not necessary.
No, exactly. And so I was shocked by that. Like for me, I was like, how can all these people, and we're in the hood, how can all these people get together and just have a great time? And I loved it. I said, yeah, because, they're still poor. They're still.
Like maybe there were sometime, but they learned how to behave. They're like,
right, yeah, it's in you. You know what I mean? And that's what's cool when you travel to a lot of third world places is that you see some people have dignity in their poverty. Some people, even though they don't have anything, when they invite you into your home, they will give you whatever they have. Like, oh, please, here. They have, it's nothing. It's pigeon. Yep. They're giving you pigeon. But that's what they got, and you eat the hell out of it because you're just thankful. You know what that meant to that family. There's a dignity there, and I guess that positivity, that dignity, that class. I feel like I would like to see that back in America. I think that in a lot of places, it would make it easier for those people, those of us growing up in poor communities, if that dignity was there more prevalently. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be shitheads.
Gives you something to shoot for.
But but there's a culture there. Like, you can all get together and drink and have fun and not fight and shoot somebody.
It's a lot of I remember I wrote a paper and I was supposed to write a treatise about like what is it that, who did you admire and how did they affect your life? Who did you look up to? What's a role model to you? And a lot of the stuff, there's a couple humans. But then mostly it's out of books. It's like characters out of books that I'd looked up to, and I thought, that's a fella I'd like to be like,
Right. Well, that mythology has power, and I think that's mythology is so important. That's what George Lucas gave to everybody, I think, really well with the Indiana Jones and with Star Wars. I think he gave us modern mythology, and I read The Lord of the Rings, not because it's a movie. I've been reading it since I was a kid, once a year, because that's some of the most powerful mythology I've ever read. Like, if you want to talk about dealing with power, being a good human, the temptations that you'll be fighting.
Addiction,
everything.
Gollum's the best junkie in film.
Ever.
I mean,
and you get a sense of it. Like, this is what you will deal with. Like, this is, and little things that the characters say in there, because Tolkien was so ridiculously smart. World War I, he had been there. You're not going to tell anything Tolkien about death that he doesn't know about life, about, you know what I mean? Like, this is a man that knows. And he studied all that ancient mythology, Beowulf and everything, and just to have that, I think, is so important. Having powerful mythology is a very, very powerful tool. It has been in my life.
That's what I wanted to ask too. Your thoughts on that mythology being so strong, and the idea that like that Bible is 100% true, if you believe it's true,
right?
Kind of thing, and like that, it's not really It's like you talk about the plan. It's like it's not so important what the plan is. It's not so important what your belief structure is. It's that you got one,
right,
and that you believe in it 100%.
Right, and I think that's important to make that book, whatever you believe in, make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it has to not hurt people in the most it can. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have that, but you have to have something that is relevant and that makes sense. And it's dangerous when you have mythology that is wrong or actually hurts people or doesn't evolve with the times, and it's not timeless. Right. And there's a lot of the Bible, I think, that is timeless, and there's a lot of it that isn't. The only parts I thought were really exciting, though, was in Revelations. That's my favorite. Did it give you a revelation? I love all that. The Bible has so much knowledge in there, really. Like, even I don't poo-poo the Bible ever. I don't poo-poo any holy book. If it's a Quran, I respect all of it with a deep respect, because that's knowledge, and people at that time in those places, they put their knowledge into that book. And if you want to believe it's from God, then that's fine with me. I don't care. But for me, to disrespect the Bible, or to disrespect the Quran, or disrespect any of those holy books that other people find very important, not like 10 people, but a lot of very smarter people than I am. For me, there's a lot of fucking idiots out there, let's be honest. There's a lot of idiots that follow all that shit or whatever. But the other fact, there's a lot of idiots that follow everything. Right, yeah.
However, the people that I have admired that has changed their life in such a pinnacle way because of that belief is so powerful. And it's kind of it's like, it looks, when I think about loyalty and commitment, and for a long time, like, loyalty is, if you've got to tell anybody how important that is, boy, you really got to just pull the car over and have a long talk about stuff, I guess, preceding that. But when I think about commitment, and I always think it's like, You read something and some girl on Facebook going, you get yourself a committed man, fuck these, or whatever, whatever. And I'm like, oh, that retard. But you think about what that is, and I was talking with Ike about it, and I was like, I feel like it's like I can teach you all the movement structure that we need to set up a good double leg, right? Distancing, lowering your level, shooting, turning the corner, all lacing the leg, all that. But I can't ever get you to take somebody down if you're not committed to that movement. And he says, I got to have commitment. I'm like, how about if that's so in they talk about as above, so below, but I look at microcosms and macrocosms. Sure, they all mimic each other identically in every instance. And just like that, how about extrapolate that into your business, into your relationships, into your, and do you expect it to work if you don't have commitment to it?
Right, and I think that commitment's there's two things there. I will say commitment can be a double-edged sword, because those are the same guys that are strapping bombs to their chest and blowing up kids. Like, they're committed to those ideals. Right. And so that commitment, I feel like that is more as a hopelessness or like a frustration, like we don't have anything else to do. No, and you're right, but there's still commitment. You know what I mean? Like that. There's nobody saying, hey, whoa, slow down a little, commitment. You know what I mean? Let's look at this. And for me, what that is optimism and pragmatism, and the balance of the two. And if one gets out of balance, then you're hosed. So if you are a pragmatist, like, I can tell you every way to do every move in every world, you will never win a fight. You will never win a fight, because when stuff goes wrong, you just have to be a blatant optimist. Right. I'm going to win. No, I'm going to take this guy down. I don't care that he's a 9-time world champion wrestler. I'm going to take him down. That's that blatant optimism, and that's at your core. Now, that by itself, it's just like, well, I don't need to train or anything, because I'm just going to take him down. Like, obviously, that's out of balance with pragmatism. But if you have the balance between being pragmatic, this is what needs to happen, and optimism, this is what I'm going to make happen. That's for me the key. My dad was the one. I always tell this story because it's such a powerful story. It shows what a dumbass I am and how brainiac my dad is. But I was on pragmatism for a while. Like, I did Dewey, I did everybody, like a year and a half. I was like, pragmatism is the martial arts. It's all, A, B, C, and D. It's science. It's breaking it down. And that was my dad that taught me that. He's in my usual dad fashion. He goes, well, son, that's great, but if you're that much of a pragmatist, there's no room for optimism. And then he walked off. And he was right. It shattered my whole world. Like, a year and a half of study. I was like, you couldn't have done that a year and a half ago when I started with Dewey, Dad.
He's like, you'd have never heard it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have. And he's right. And that's where I really learned. And that goes for everything. Like, I always use Chuck Liddell, Rashad Evans. That fight, I have never been to a fight, and I've been doing this longer than most people, and definitely more of it than almost anybody. I've never had a fight where people were like, Rashad is actually going to get slaughtered. Like, how can you, in good conscience, put Rashad Evans with Chuck Liddell? All Rashad does is take people down. He sprawls and knocks people out. Well, how would you even take this fight, Greg? And there's a, you know what I mean? And over and over and over, I was like, God, but they were all pragmatists, and that's what fans are. They're well, you know, A and B has a stat, has a stat. You know what I mean? So they were all breaking it down. The only guy in the room that knew he was going to beat him was Rashad. You know what I mean? And that's an optimism, and that's what we all had. We were like, yeah, we're going to win.
Dude, that's my moment for that is I was sitting next to Rashad, in between Rashad and Keith's dad, and fucking Tank Abbott was behind us yelling. He's hammered.
I love
he's
Tank.
Like maybe 8 rows behind us, and he's because he sees Keith's dad. He's like, Terry, and then he's yelling to us, that's Terry Bradshaw. I'm like, you fucking dolt. But
Tank's so funny.
You know, it got so heavy for me seeing Keith walk out and get in the ring, and he's alone. And he's by alone, I mean, there's not anybody in there except maybe the 3 of us sitting right there that are with him.
Right.
And
right.
I mean, that's of course not true, but like,
it's
fucking heavy, dude. And just all the lights there, the rest of the place is dark, and I'm like, well, this is a striking endeavor he's about to undertake, you know? And then what he did there, just to watch, like, that was so powerful for me in that way. And just that belief, you know? And that's, I guess, the thing, like, just people are like, well, how good were you? I'm like, at the best levels, mediocre or less, like, not good. But garnered so much out of my career fighting just from experiences like that, knowing guys like that, and seeing that and going, holy shit, it made me go, maybe you too. Maybe you can believe
absolutely.
a little too, you know?
Absolutely.
And that, man, that's a fucking beautiful thing, bro.
It really is. Just believing in yourself, I think, is and not listening to anything negative, I think is important.
How much do you think you can err on the side of that? And I mean, because I've been, like, the last bunch of years, I've been really looking towards that end and going, just not going to think about that because I don't think it does my brain waves. I don't think it does my synapses and the electricity in my brain any good to dwell on that.
Right.
And so people are like, well, you're in denial then of this issue. And I'm like, well, when I think about an issue, I get so obsessed that the bigger, even if it's a little issue, maybe I think, there could be a problem over there. And then start looking and I'm like, no, that's a real problem. We should look at that. And then I start tinkering with it. And I'm like, hey, this is a fucking problem. And it becomes a real problem before I know it.
Right. Well, and that's your own utility. I think everybody has their own path, and that's your utility. I guess my answer would be the balance of pragmatism and optimism. If you're all optimist all the time, like the secret thing of like, if you just think good things, it'll start happening.
Right.
I mean, Voltaire he wrote Candide to counter that whole thing. He's like, here's a great guy that thinks all kinds of great stuff, and he just gets shit on by life, his entire thing.
Right.
But for me, it's a balance. Like, there needs to be, okay, yeah, I will address this problem, but I'm going to do it relentlessly optimistic.
Have you ever had because that's a good way to typify you as relentlessly optimistic. That's some tombstone shit for you right there. Have you ever walked out with a guy or had or in any event, maybe not just fight, and you're like, and a guy's so optimistic and you're just against insurmountable odds, you're like, I don't know, okay, let's go.
I've been on that end on my own self and been on that end as a quartering fighter. So no, it's true. Both times there's a feeling of just you don't feel sorry for him, but you're like, man, you're in for a real war here. I mean, I always think we're gonna win. I'm so biased. I'm always like when we don't win, I'm like, damn it.
Who else's side would you be on?
Right, that's my guy.
Right.
But even sometimes where I'm like, ooh, it's gonna be a tough one. This is gonna be a real war. And they're like, I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah,
and I like that. You know. I like that. I think it's wonderful. Even if you're going to lose, you might as well go out with a smile.
Yep.
I saw a great Saturday morning breakfast cereal, which is a web cartoon comic, and it's brilliant. The guy is brilliant. He gave me a thing in my office, a little personalized thing, and he's an amazing guy, Zach Wiener. And it was this woman's in front of a firing squad, and it's how existentialism can be handy. And it said, I forget exactly how the joke went, but basically it says you might as well tell a joke. Like she tells a terrible joke to the firing squad because they're going to make any difference to you if you're just staring at fear at the guns or you're going to go out with a joke. Like what's the difference? Right. And I like that a lot. Like if it's arbitrary, then then just go out with a smile.
When I got arrested by the federal marshals on that bank robbery, there's these we're fucking they're doing elbow prints. They're doing, I mean, it's no joke. And I was a kid, man, and going through, and he's like, I was like, that's J. Edgar Hoover. And he goes, yep. And I'm like, is it true he really wore panties? And the dudes are like, you don't have any idea the kind of trouble you're in. I was like, well, you guys should know you're the FBI. Like, what the fuck? You don't know? And they're like, and there was maybe a little bit of that.
There's a lot of that. That's awesome. Yeah, no, but
and at the other end of it, it was like, I'm here and this is fucked, and I'm probably going to get raped later tonight.
Right. But might as well go out with a smile.
Going to have a little fun.
And I think that's a warrior attitude. It really is. Seriously, that's a warrior attitude. And that, I think, is what defines warriors, is the ability to take a situation that would crush other people. And because it's not necessarily fighting. Because right now, I'm not joking with you. I can go get two guys that are drunk in front of my gym. We've both been to my other gym. And I'll put them in the cage, and they'll fight right now. If I say there's a bottle of beer in it for them, does that make them fighters and warriors? Right. No. Right. No, those are drunk guys that are throwing down. Like a warrior to me is something a little bit different. Like a warrior to me is somebody who is professional about it, who goes through the torture and the time to make weight.
Who isn't going to be pulled into it otherwise. Like Joey said a great thing. He's like, I'd rather buy these guys a beer than have to beat them up, Tait.
Exactly.
I'm like, right, I like
that's it, because that's a warrior. But that to me is not just about fighting. It's about how you come at life. Yeah. Are you relentlessly optimistic? Because it's easy to be negative. It's the easiest thing in the world.
That's the default. That's the common stuff, right?
Easy to be negative. It's when stuff sucks. And it's hard to be an optimist.
I guess maybe that's the thing that I turn on to most is people that want to be that demand to be uncommon. Like, I'm not going to be. I'm not that. This would be the common thing to do, and I'm not going to do that.
Exactly. And it takes guts.
Where do you want to be in like 5 years?
On an island surrounded by bikini models.
Now, pragmatically or optimistically.
I haven't balanced that out with any pragmatism at all. Sorry, honey. Hi, Stephanie.
Right. Kids, you're gonna be good.
Right, kids, you'll be fine. No, in 5 years, I want to be. I always look at it. Can I kick my own ass, and can I outthink myself last year? And as long as I'm doing that, I'm all right. Now, eventually, that's gonna. As I get older, it's gonna go downhill. But I get trickier. But that's the real thing. Is I want to relentlessly self-improve. And so, in 5 years, I hope to be a lot better than I am sitting here right now.
You still think you'll be coaching?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't. I still love it. I mean, the pace is killing me right now, but I love it so much. You're
getting duplicated, though, a lot. I mean, not duplicated in a way, but like you've got a huge
coaching staff. Yeah, I really do, and they're just keeping me afloat. Like, and we're all in it together, and me and my big bro, Mr. Winklejohn, and but I am expanding into other areas, I think, but I still love it too much. Like, I can't think of waking up and doing something else. Like, I couldn't play video games all day. Right. I couldn't get like high and to call my friends
and be challenging yourself no matter what. That's why I was like, wonder where does this go?
I want to improve. I want to get more into the strategy stuff, like studying with these scientists that I've been doing a lot of lately, and just keep pushing boundaries. I still want to come up with new moves. Oh yeah, I'm gonna write. I have one more book that I'm gonna write, and it's gonna be the strategy book, I think, and hopefully it'll transcend MMA. It'll be an actual like, this is strategy. Here's how you think, and here's an example of this, and here's an example of that. Repeatable, right? Empirical, repeatable examples over and over and over. Here's if you're going to be hand-to-hand fighting. Here's small unit, large unit, whatever it may be. Yeah. And that's going to be, I think, my, and then I'll be done. Then I'll garden or something good.
The fuck you will.
Yeah, I'll be really good at gardening. Your next podcast will be like, listen, I got my tulips. Enormous.
He'll be like Mike Tyson with his pigeons.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You got to have balance. So, but yeah, it's been such a great ride so far. I don't want it to end yet.
What do you think? I was talking with Keith, and he was talking about, like, he's like, I'm feeling better than ever, and he's just been doing a bunch of boxing and stuff lately, and he's like, maybe I'll go do that again. And what are your thoughts about? Do you have any directives, or not directives per se, but like What do you guys have you spoken about that, or do you guys?
Yeah, well, my thing is, my fighters are men, and if I give as much advice as they ask, especially my guys that have been through everything with me, like Keith has been through everything with me.
Yeah, that's an OG right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I will give advice if he asks, but I'm not going to tell any man how to live.
Right.
If they come and they say, Coach, what do you think? I would say A, B, and C. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with him. Like, Keith's probably got a few more in him. Not too worried about it. I don't think he's got 10 more years in him, but he's got a few more in him. And but if he didn't, I would tell him, listen, be careful. You're going to do what you're going to do, but be careful.
Yep.
But I don't believe that. I think he could do a couple more. No problem.
I think he's dangerous.
He is. So that's for me as a thing. Is like I always look at it like we're riding together on the range. You know what I mean? Like these are all my cowboy. I'm just the head ranch hand. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that's like, you guys go do this and go do that. But at the end of the day, they're all men, and they're riding with their hats on. And I'm not going to be presumptuous to be like, I'm not their dad. Like, you do this right now.
Right.
Like,
this is what I need.
Right, yeah. Can you, like the Wild Bunch or any of these, like, can you imagine any of those guys being like, listen, the leader is respected, but he gives respect back. That's what a leader does. And so that's the respect I give back for them.
Well, you're a guy that's definitely, you lead from the front, as they say,
I do my best to do that.
It's just, that's duplicatable. That's so admirable that you want to know, like, how are you successful like this? Just watch you. It's been like I don't know, and it's weird. It's like you get so much of your stuff. You've got such a broad knowledge base. Like whether you're reading about shipwrecks or about science or about and I guess it's all kind of delves into one after a while. Like
it does, and I found I was talking to my little brother. I forget what I was talking to this about, but like I always bring everything back to combat. I didn't notice that I've done that, but like if I'm studying fractals, I say, how do fractals work for fighting? Like everything comes right,
this prism.
Right. So, but what that's done beautifully for me is give me a little bit of knowledge outside of fight. Like I know how weather patterns work,
right?
Because of chaos. Because I was looking at chaos to see how it applied to fighting, and because I did that, I learned all this stuff. Or you learn whatever it may be. I pull in these
music when you speak.
Right, exactly. Music. How does music relate to fighting?
Ciphers.
Suddenly, I'm doing all exactly. And so I've been able to use combat as a focal point to be. I'm not a huge Renaissance man, but at least I have a little bit of. I don't know about that.
Be honest.
A little bit of knowledge in some areas, and fighting gave me that. Like combat gave me that.
How does that help you with raising kids?
I think it helps me raising kids a lot. There's a lot that the martial arts gave me for raising kids. First of all, the knowledge base so the kids can see, there's a lot of really cool ideas there. Yeah. I don't want either of my kids to be fighters at all. My son does MMA. My daughter did for a while just to get some self-defense stuff. Yeah. My son does because for guys, society is different, and I'm not being sexist. That's society. Like realistically, he's going to get in a lot more fights than my daughter is. And my daughter.
Other thing is what you're teaching guys that are 18 to 40 or whatever right now. It's like, I want them to be on speed with these guys.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be like, you have to be able to handle yourself. It gives you confidence. You know what I mean? So you're not quiet in a room, but you can talk and be respected.
I just did a self-defense thing in LA, and that is weird about the plan. I'm like, listen, we're not going to go over a ton of stuff. It's like we're going to talk about awareness. We're going to talk about your voice. We're going to talk about how you position yourself. We're going to talk about Will, who's 6'5" and 280 pounds, his struggles are going to be when he's in court.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Versus his wife, who's going to try not to get raped and killed.
Right, exactly.
Like it's all, and so everybody needs their voice, but for different reasons. You need to be like, hey, I don't want any trouble over and over again, Will. And whatever the thing is. But I'm like, here, we're going to do a simple arm drag when somebody goes and pushes you, and we're going to take the back, and you're going to lock this up on their neck, and you're going to drag them back, and they're not going to be able to stop you.
Right.
And they're like, well, how do I? I'm like, it's going to occur. You're going to survive until it occurs, and then you have a kill point.
Right.
That's all we're talking about.
Right.
If you know how this ends, you know more than that guy.
Right.
Probably,
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that whole thing, I started thinking about fighting. I was like, here's all these grown men that don't really know how to defend themselves. I'm like, that is reprehensible.
No, it is, and you should. You should be, and it should be then your last course of action. Obviously, if you're in modern society, you should be intelligent enough to make it your last course of action, or well trained enough to make it your last course of action. But I think that kids need a relationship with violence. I think that now it doesn't necessarily have to be.
That just makes me smile when you say that.
They do. all these white kids that are wasting people in schools
Yeah.
have no relationship to violence. They have
Right.
relationships to video games. They have relationships to the Matrix movie. That is not violence. That is not what it feels like to have a bloody nose. Ask that kid what it feels like to have a bloody nose.
Look at when the white bone comes through and there's no
Right.
blood at first, and you just see the fat and the whiteness, and then the blood starts to come. Talk about that, and then tell me how easy it is to shoot somebody when you're in a video game.
Exactly. And so, like, getting pushed around, that's not real violence either. Having a relationship with violence is being empathetic and understanding how it feels, not only to hurt somebody, but to be hurt as well. And I think that's important, because if you don't have a relationship to violence, you get into these aberrations, these weird kind of eddies where you just get into these crazy places where things make sense.
It's the same thing as muting sexuality.
Exactly.
I mean,
Same.
it's not a coincidence that priests fuck kids. It's like,
exactly.
Like that we've made that happen by this construct.
Exactly.
And it's true too that most douchebags that are really true 100%, like they work at it, like they're really douchey. They've never been punched in the mouth. It's like that would have gotten fixed a long time ago if you did just take a couple shots to the head.
Right. And maybe even more than once to reiterate.
There's a price to pay for this.
Right, exactly.
Okay, I get it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to that. And everybody's so afraid of violence. Everybody's so fearful of violence because it is dangerous and it is powerful.
Yep.
And if you don't have these control parameters and you don't understand it, football is fine for it.
Sure.
But football, the danger there is that there's no martial art to it. It's like just wreck the other guy. So you get these bullies that are big and just enjoy wrecking these people without saying, well, listen now. Think about what it feels like to be wrecked. This should be your last. You know what I mean? So there has to be, it's not just like suffering needlessly is pointless. But if you have suffering that it leads to wisdom, then it's something. And I think that's
a breakthrough.
That's the power of the martial arts. So you can be a football player and get a relationship advice if you have a coach that says, you are a big, powerful man, kid, and you don't want to hurt people because remember when you get slammed, how that, you know what I mean? Like if you have a good teacher.
Or is the idea, keep your quarterback safe.
Right.
Versus, I really need you to hit that running back at
Right, exactly. It's so much about, like we said, setting that culture. How are we going to set our warrior culture? How are our sheepdogs going to act?
Yeah.
And that's important because it takes courage to be a fighter. It takes courage to be a sheepdog. That's what I call the cops and military. Those are our sheepdogs. They're out there protecting us. So how is that culture? Are you going to be, nitpicking everything they do? How are you going to treat your warriors? How are you going to set that culture?
Who are in a whole different group. I mean, I think of that, and it's to me, it's unfathomable that I'm putting a young man in an impossible decision-making position where he's going to have to do unspeakable things to avoid danger for himself or to protect his brother. Like, it's almost unconscionable to not be in that position and to have a real commentary on that position.
Right, exactly.
It's a whole different thing. What do you think about kids? Like, first time I ever saw it, somebody posted something on the internet, and they're like, my kid is, I don't know, he's 8 or 12 or something, and he's like, just got his first boxing match, and I thought a real boxing match, and I saw a video of it, and I was like, wow, they're smacking each other, and as far as combat with kids, and as far as latent brain trauma, and as far as all that, what do you think? Like you said, your son's in MMA and learning that. What does that mean, and what does that look like for?
Well, it's about control. I mean, and that's what's great thing about teaching young kids how to deal with violence is they've got their headgears and their pads on and everything else, but they're not. They shouldn't be bombing 100% on each other. They should be. If you get hit hard, you say hold on and control, because it's a balance, right? I mean, you don't want to live in a Nerf world so your brain lives okay, but you don't want to just be like taking blunt trauma to the head over and over again to prove some silly point.
What do you think about that as far as like Golden Gloves boxing? Like we've had that since I was a kid, anyway. I mean, a long time. Like, there's kids 12 years old or 16 years old, and is there a time that it's too young to take striking trauma to the head?
I think there is. I think that anytime that you're young, you got to be really careful with that. I think there's ways to mitigate it. I think that there might not be, well, you shouldn't spar at all because, again, you need some kind of relationship with it. But that's where control comes in and fair play and all of these things that you should be learning as a young martial arts student, and I include boxing as a martial art. That's where you should be getting that stuff. Because, if you're just going to take trauma to the head, we all know old boxers that have stayed in it too long and they're gone. So
I
we don't
wonder
want
with the advent of, with television and like, how popularized everything is, and do you do MMA now and all that, and or do you do UFC and the hilarious stuff that we all laugh about, but kids getting pushed into unreasonable positions by parents that
that's
maybe
been
never
since day
were,
one,
and,
right?
all
that's
that
day
stuff.
one. I mean, wrestling parents are some of the worst.
How do you mitigate that?
You know what? Nobody taught the parents.
Not as if it's your responsibility, but as a culture,
right? Well, I mean,
societally.
it just can't be acceptable, and it is now. I mean, because again, Americans are entitled. We're the most. I'm an American, and I can say it. We are entitled. We think that we should be respected like everybody else,
right,
at all times. Like what I say about football should be just as respected as the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Like we're the same,
right?
He and I.
Right.
Like just because he does it I could do it for a living.
Yeah.
He was just luckier than me.
Yeah.
Like, did we have that? All of us have that mentality of like just craziness, and the debates and stuff, and this and that, and these arguments and counter arguments, which is fine if you're a fan. But where it gets to be that doesn't hurt anybody. I mean, except for the athletes, and you get paid to do that, so whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that mentality hurts when you have parents that are like that are like, you know what? I'm going to tell you what, you have to do it this way because I never, you know what I mean? Like, no, I should be respected like that.
I love that thing too about you don't live in a Nerf world and all that, and like kind of where we are in a culture of, I don't know if it's still in vogue, but there's people that are friends that have kids that were like, they run a race at school and everybody wins. There's not one person that loses. It's set up so that everybody wins. And I was like, that sounds like a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea.
And maybe it was Mr. Luttrell, and he was like, "It's unreal what goes on, man." And I start hearing it, and I'm like, what a shame that is. Not only for the little kid that's a dominant little bastard that's gonna do great,
right,
but also for the kid that sucks or is mediocre or wherever he is at running. Because he never learns that he's awesome at the violin, or he never learns that he can really throw a fast pitch.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
it's even worse.
You don't find your own greatness.
It's even worse than that. I think you don't learn how to lose. You have to learn how to lose.
Yeah. Go ahead and turn 18. There's some losers out here.
Right. You have to learn how to lose, regroup, and compete again. You have to learn how to be an optimist in the face of this relentless. You have to learn that. Like you're not going to learn that being told you win, and then when you actually lose in the real world. It's devastating.
Yeah.
You don't know how to
that could be
regroup.
it.
You don't know how to play the next game. I love baseball players that win 5 games, lose 1, win another 6. Like that, you have to learn how to lose. That is a part of being a human. You can't win all the time at everything.
And you know what? It goes back to the original thing I think of. Your words ring in my head of you just got to have fun. If you're not having fun, don't do it, kid.
Right.
And it's like, it is that, man.
Exactly.
It's like you don't, then it's the winning and the losing. It's not, here I am on this road.
Because it's a process. Are you saying this thing defines you?
Right.
This running race is all that you have. And if it is, you're in trouble. Like,
and at the end on 4 p.m. on Tuesday, when it's over, that's it. Now you're just in a vacuum.
When you're done with your career, what are you going to do? Like that obsession is fine. But there's no excuse for not having that obsession push into other things to be, you know what I mean? Because you're a great boxer, that's fine. When you're done, take up painting. Right. Even if you suck at it.
Yep.
Do something.
Well, and do that thing that's uncomfortable. That I'm a big fan of, do something that is scary and uncomfortable every day.
Heck yeah.
I mean, when I stopped fighting, I started snowboarding. I was terrified of it for some weird, silly reason.
Maybe because you're going 100 miles an hour down a mountain.
And I saw a guy standing there and break his arm, have a compound fracture while we were standing there. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem like the best idea for these both careers. But then I started surfing a few years ago. Then I started paddleboarding. Then I started, and I'm like, the rock climbing, or like all that stuff. And you're like, let's just get into it, man. Like this whole life is rich.
Right, exactly. And so if you're defined by one little thing, you've missed the point of what the sport was trying to teach you, because you can't win at everything all the time. So if winning is everything, you're missing the point. The process is everything. The process, winning takes care of itself. If you do the process right, that's what winning is.
I used to really regale in being like, ooh, he's a competitor, and then ooh, he's a fighter, and all that, and these definitions of this one thing. And I remember sitting with Eddie Bravo, Rogan, and Ari, and some people coming up, and I'm working for Joe at the time, and I'm not really fighting. I'm feeling like I'm doing nothing. I'm bodyguarding him. I'm going around, and Ari, somebody's like, I don't know if it's a waiter or what. Oh, so what do you do? And Ari's like, well, I'm a comic. and they ask Eddie, and he says, "I'm a musician." Not even a jiu-jitsu guy, right? He loves music so much. Like, that's his thing.
That's awesome.
And then Joe's like, "Yeah, I'm a comedian." And I was like, "How fucking crazy is that?" And then it came to me, and I'm like, I'm stumped. You know what I mean? And it was really a regrouping time for me at that time. But looking at now, one of the best answers that I've seen is my friend Danny. He's a CrossFitter, Danny Leslie, and he goes, he signs every blog that he writes. Danny Leslie, professional human.
Nice.
And it's like, it's really it, man.
Yeah,
like, how do
cool.
I just open up to the whole thing and not pigeonhole myself into whatever this is?
Right. No, I think that's great and so important to be a healthy person. And listen, I'm not a perfect guy. I make more mistakes than anybody constantly. But I think that you can still get wisdom and lessons. And I'm not saying, like, be like me, like I'm perfect at all. Don't be like me at all. But there you can be as best as you can be within your limits. You know what I mean? And we all have limits. I
disagree that vehemently just with your last statement. Don't be like Greg Johnson. Like
giant floppy ears and a huge nose.
Well, except for the ears, maybe. But the thing about trying and getting up every day, regardless if you're tired, regardless if there's a payoff that's in a minute, regardless if it's going to cost you, getting up every day and doing that same thing, there's such a merit in that kind of a discipline, I think, for the life,
It feels good. I like it. It's fun.
And it's the plan.
It's like the plan, whatever, as long as we got a plan.
As long as we got a plan.
That's it. And I like that a lot. And you see it even in old movies and stuff, and then you reference it to when you were in bad situations. But it's really true. Like everybody always has some semblance of a plan. Like even Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, when they were going to go out and shoot at the end, they're like, they did. Yep. They both knew what the plan was. Yep. Let's go. Yep. There's kind of that's a coolness. There's just like, okay, what's the plan? All right, let's do it.
It's that, we're committed.
Yep.
We don't necessarily want to, but this is what we're committed
plan.
to.
Yep, here's the plan. Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon for sure.
It's dope. I know you're busy, man, and I could keep you all here all night, but thanks a lot, and
no worries,
we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely, brother,
right,
man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, much love.